basically put the citizen at the centre of these different topics, and then we try to work out what do we need to help the citizen do or be. Things like empowerment, rights, as a community, not just as an individual, how to be critical, etc., etc. All these sorts of words we've talked about. So how do we have all of those things? We focus a lot, and we kind of had this argument about what is data literacy, how close is it to digital literacy, to information literacy, media literacy, numeracy. It's somewhere in there. But we focus a lot on policy and how your data literate citizen would be engaged in policy better through data on the one hand, but what could policy do to help create these literate citizens and basically joined up policy. Maybe do we need a data envoy like we used to have an e-envoy? How does policy need to make sure there's a lot better tools for all of us to understand what's going on in the world? Those are sorts of things that, to close the local loop in terms of citizens using data. Then we look at over here. Then we started to move on to, well, how on earth would you put that into curriculum? Lots of stuff is already in the curriculum, maybe not explicitly joined up, particularly the importance of activity, project focused. So that would seem to be identified as a way that people get interested in it. How do you do that across the life cycle, not just at schools? Libraries was the last thing that came up. Maybe libraries should be a place that should be much more about modern knowledge around data rather than just stuff in books. Because that's
really
you want to say more stuff than that?
Really interesting stuff. Yeah, thanks guys.
We had a really interesting discussion.
Okay.
That you can see here. Yeah. We created this network of all the potential things that could influence policy. And all these potential actors, thanks guys for coming.
Thank you very much for
all these potential actors. But in the end, we came to the realization that, as that group suggested, everything starts with the citizen. It seems to be, it needs to happen from the bottom up instead of being imposed as a national policy first and foremost, and then scaling down, cascading down to grassroots level. There was something about data value chain. Do you remember? What was that? He was mentioning. I think it was the fact that we need to make to create some sort of value chains to kind of start from bottom up, so to the point that the government becomes interested in the idea of data literacy, and then they implement it as a policy. What other things we said?
So we talked about the differences between data collection and where data gets collected, and the types of data that get collected at different places and collaborated on, but also that there needs to be an increase in data literacy just across the piece, and just trying to understand what that is and where the analysis takes place, and then the aggregation of the analysis and how that's sort of clustered and fed out and up. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Anything to add?
I think that was the point I was going to add. Yeah.
There you go, that's it.
Okay, so we start out with thinking about policy. So it would be really interesting and very useful if we had, specifically for data that was publicly funded and generated through publicly funded projects, to also have a requirement for contextual information to better understand that data. We're also
almost like a user's guide, wasn't
yes,
it? Like making
yes.
it really clear and easy to use it, because there's a lot of examples I think we were citing of just because it's there doesn't mean people are using it or understand how to use it, and that's not serving its purpose then.
There were also a number of things that we kind of noted in terms of duplication of research and duplication of work. And this is from Hilary's point that she's noticed this quite a lot as well. That it's connected with the funding environment, so there are certain mechanisms of funding that are available where organisations or research groups or think tanks go for a pot of money in order to drive research in a specific area, not because it hasn't been done before, but because the money's available. So we need to rethink what that funding environment looks like. So a regulation on publicly funded research for open data repurposing.
Making open research.
Well, open research, there you go. So let's just cross that out, put open research.
No, open research. You know, that's applying the same principles
Yeah.
to funding, to research funding, not just for the sake of making it more transparent, but for the sake of making it more collaborative.
Yes,
and,
yeah, absolutely.
and accessible.
And what this does essentially, so an open research policy would minimise duplication and encourage joint working. It also kind of relates to PSI, which was public
sector reuse information.
public sector
Reuse
information reuse.
PRSI.
Yeah,
No.
PSRI.
PSRI?
I think it's
Reuse.
RPSI, reuse of public sector
RPU.
information.
Reuse of public sector information. Data sharing agreements and FOI as well. Kind of impacts on that. One thing that we kind of noticed as well, so if there was some kind of charter and standardisation for data sharing agreements, that would be really useful as part of an open data, open research charter, for example,
Oh, wow.
would be really useful. I just made that up, but I think that could be
That's
good.
good. I like it.
Yeah. Then we moved, the other thing was licensing the principle of data commons. So thinking, right, okay, well, we've got digital commons, what would a data commons look like? So that would open up a whole kind of avenue for joined up working and for open collaboration. Then we moved on to curriculum. So this is where the SQA kind of think tank came in full force here. So we spotted that there needs to be some kind of cultural change in the development cycle of curriculum because there seems to be some kind of governance lag in terms of how the system works and how specific curriculum areas are written into the curriculum. A real problem that many of us have noticed. One of the examples of really good practice probably is the Digital Passport, which is a vehicle for project-driven learning, possibly not used as much as it could be, but it provides us with a model of best practice that we can kind of think about in terms of cross-curriculum design. What would a data passport SQA vehicle look like? So we're thinking about how that might work in terms of data as a subject within the curriculum and how that would work as a kind of vehicle for project-driven teaching and learning. Then we moved into life cycle. So we were thinking about, so how does this work in terms of informal or extracurriculum, which would both help, support and inform curriculum. So we kept coming back to this idea of future-proofing for the world of work.
I think that just came out with the fact that life in data, we can't just think about tackling it in the formal educational environment, because that's only going to cover you up to your maybe 18, 19 or 20, whereas there's a workforce out there already just now whose career is going to be impacted by, things like automation, things like artificial intelligence, which are all fueled by a life in data as well. So thinking about how do we make sure that the learning applies to those industries and those workplaces as well.
Yeah.
And that got us thinking about other opportunities for learning it in sort of informal or extracurricular environment. We had this discussion about what might an intergenerational workshop on data literacy look like. We know that there's workshops out there, so I've run workshops on digital skills like programming, making things between adults and young people. And we know that there's programs out there where it's like, learning maths or learning to read and write with your children. We'd be interested to, we don't know what the answer to this, but what would one on data literacy look like as well? And then we've got that thing about, again, project-based. How could you do something project-based within a school or within a club? It might not be in school, it might be guides, it might be BBs, something like that. We spoke about, the proliferation of things like Internet of Things devices or other things that you might have in your home that do measure things already. I think we spoke about smart meters. Is there a project-based thing that could be used to bring out some of these skills that we've spoken about that could be done at home in your own time as a fun project?
And this could, it's just occurred to me, this could capture some really useful qualitative data on how people experience that and how they engage with that process.
Plastic bottles, that's
So-
really
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Open research charter.
Yeah, just like doing that.
Okay. Just make sure that we put open research charter. Okay, so should we just
Yeah.
wrap up? I mean,
Yes,
I'm kind of thinking that we kind of have wrapped up, but let's just.
First, I think we would like just to thank you for coming along for a full day session. I know that you have quite busy schedules, and really appreciate the effort that you have made to come here and discuss this, and to make it in a quite enthusiastic and engaged way. Also, we'd like to reiterate the fact that, as you know, the research network is here for you. It's just that I think you have seen the power of coming all together and start just discussing this, trying to bypass, those perhaps restrictions that normally are busy schedules. People are not able to kind of meet and have a kind of relaxed conversation about things and a reflection about the things that we care and we want to implement. Because we really believe in them. I don't know if you want to say anything else. That's pretty much.
That's it with me. I've learned a lot today,
Yes.
as always, and really value your time and your contributions to the discussions. We're going to take some of that away, and we're going to reflect upon it and try and synthesize some of that. We're going to be generating reports as part of the project in general anyway. A lot of that material is going to be fully available to access on the website. There are some sensitivities, Joanna, you kind of mentioned in terms of the embargo that's currently in force for some public bodies in terms of the general election and so on. So don't worry about that. We're not going to put anything sensitive up during this period.
It will take a little bit of time to transcribe it. So
Absolutely.
it's not going to be any time soon.
We've procured a transcriber to do all this. So so thank you so much.